joint health, belly tone, memory. If you are postmenopausal, you have a greater risk of things like irritable bowel syndrome, Crohn's disease, gluten intolerance, diabetes, high blood pressure. Shall I keep going? Yay, being postmenopausal, right? And perimenopause, that time between normal menstrual cycles and the cessation of for most women, is an average of 5 to 10 years. Right? Yeah. Yeah. Got it? Oh, yeah, I think that is your part of the Okay. So you are back, circling back. Prior to your birth, you have had all of the eggs you're going to get. I wish there was some kind of, especially for folks who struggle with infertility, I would love it if we could just like plug you in somewhere and add some more. Do you have a question?
Yeah.
Really all I saw moving was the pinky.
I was trying to think
there's
really
a question.
raise my hand. On this, it's like the subject of like hermaphrodites actually that are born with both.
Mhm.
Are they actually born with the female reproductive, like the uterus and ovaries and everything as well?
It'll depend. So we have 46 chromosomes, but you're getting 23 from dad and you're getting 23 from mom, which means there has to be some kind of association. And there has to be, I'm going to use recipes again, right? How many of you have tried to modify a recipe for whatever reason, and you think this is going to work, and then yet when you do it, it's
Horrible.
close, but it's not there, right? Substitutions, that kind of stuff. So, does anybody remember how many recipes it takes to build one of these?
All of them?
About 900,000 to build something as complex as the human body. I know, right? That's a lot. So you build 900,000 of anything, the chances are your instructions are not going to be clear. Then we also have to think about dominance when we're talking about genes, because dominant recessive traits. And some expression, some disease expression is because mom has the predisposition to it and dad has the predisposition to it. And if it's only if both parents have that particular gene, will a child have something? Cystic fibrosis is the classic example. If dad doesn't carry it, there's no way the child's going to have it. If mom doesn't have it, there's no way the child's going to have it. Both parents have to have the trait for cystic fibrosis for it to have a chance to express in the child. So when we're talking about anomalies of genetics, now we have to look at what were the original recipe items. How was it put together? What was dominant, what was recessive, and were there extra chromosomes? Were there extra genetic pieces that got into the recipe and changed the outcome? Does that help?
Yeah.
It's amazing how many of us actually function given how much dysfunction is possible, right? Okay, so where we'll start seeing some real differences in meiosis of oocytes versus sperm is we don't want 4 viable eggs coming out of every single follicle, right? Remember I said 10 to 20 ovary, or 10 to 20 follicles per ovary per cycle. So we can't, our bodies are not physically, not designed, that's not the word I want. Our structure does not permit multiple pregnancies time after time after time. Especially as often as we can get pregnant. Are there genetic predispositions for twins and multiples? Yes. Yes, there are. And that actually runs more commonly in dad's genetic line than mom's. Doesn't mean it doesn't come from mom's, but it tends to be more common for dad's. Okay. Just like hair loss patterns, that comes from mom's side. Male pattern baldness is almost exclusively from mom's side. So if you are looking at a child, look at mom, look at her dad. Whatever dad's hair pattern is, that's what the male child is likely to have.
You're welcome, Theron.
Not your hair, your dad's hair.
You're welcome, Theron.
There you go. Okay. So, because women have a finite reproductive lifespan, unlike the male, it's their entire life, literally to the day they die, if everything's working the way it's supposed to. We have a finite reproductive history, or lifespan. Typically about 30 to 40 years. We don't want all 10,000 eggs per ovary being ejected, because we aren't going to physically be able to house that pregnancy. Because if baby's not getting enough nutrients, they're going to take it from mama's body. Right? That is just the way pregnancy works. So if little one is not getting enough nutrients, they will strip it from your body. Okay. So as this meiosis is going through, see here's meiosis 1. Now we have a secondary oocyte that is capable of still going through more meiosis processes. This one actually is now what we term a polar body. Now it's going to come down and split in meiosis 2, just like we saw meiosis 2 for the male. But these two polar bodies are not capable of being impregnated. So why do we have them?
The spare?
Estrogen.
Oh, estrogen.
No, that estrogen. We kind of do that. Okay. So when it goes through the second meiosis, you see this? Only if sperm penetrates. That we have the viable one here. Whereas prior to this, look at this, I mean, weird pool, because here I'm geeking out again. Because the sperm is the final trigger from meiosis 2. Because in the female, we don't want 4 viable eggs. We want 1 that is capable of being successful. Anybody else? I think we're pretty amazing. Okay. Questions so far? Sleepy people, do you need to stand up and stretch? We've got about 10 minutes to go. Okay? All right. All right. Now, when we're looking, oh, sorry, the screen where you can see it. Sorry. I know what you're talking about. Be helpful if you guys can see it. Okay, so because of the need to replenish the uterine lining to have the best chance of implantation and success of that pregnancy, we have to shed the lining of our uterus on a consistent basis, which is the whole reason we have menses. Okay. So anytime, I'm sure ladies, you've been to the doctor where they say, what was the first day of your last period? That's it. And my suggestion for those of you who aren't already doing it, keep track of your periods, because we're going to ask you for like the next 40, 50, 60 years.
Tracker app on the phone.
Mm-hmm. Well, now there are tracker apps. What we used to say is just make a little circle on the calendar so that you can go back and reference it. Much easier to see.
What's a calendar?
Yeah, exactly. It's the picture thing with the little square boxes.
Ah, okay.
Okay, so do keep track of your menses, because then you have some idea of what your normal is, because everybody has their own normal. All right, so the only thing that's consistent is you start bleeding. So that's the day that we consider day 1 of your cycle, because all of the other variables are going to make it hard. So we all talk about the first day of bleeding as the first day of your cycle. So in the beginning of your cycle, what's happening is you're sloughing off the old lining. Often it appears dark, meaning it's older blood, right? It's usually 3 to 5 days. Some people will go, right? Average. Which means some women only bleed a day or 2. Some women bleed 9, 10, or more. Whatever is their average. Ladies, I'm sorry to tell you, but you tend to follow your mom's pattern. Yay. That means you'll also probably follow her birthing pattern as well. I know some of you are going, oh man, I'm doomed. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. My mom's longest labor, 7 hours.
Hmm.
Ben, literally, I think I was just in the way, 4 hours. I had to get out of the way. I mean, that was pretty much it. Truly, right? I pushed one time. Ooh, that didn't happen, because Dad did the Keystone Cop slide around, and there was literally a nurse with the gown
Waiting.
and he slid his arms in, put on a pair of gloves and caught him. That's how close it was, right?
Nice.
So yeah. But 4 hours is intense,
Yeah.
right? And you know what some stupid person called the first phase of labor? The enlightenment phase. I'm like, I'm not feeling very enlightened here.
No.
I'm just feeling a whole lot of cramping and, that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. It's like, who came up with that stupid name, right? That naming
That, I was just gonna say, that name.
that committee member
Had to be a man.
Maybe it's enlightening you to how doomed you are for the next 80.
Yeah. And there are some women who struggle with pregnancy from day one. There are some women who love being pregnant.
I don't.
Love being pregnant. I mean, there were a couple of days that I was like, can I just do this tomorrow? I just need a break. Obviously, no, the option is not there. I love being pregnant. Loved being pregnant. Would do some more, right? So the average blood loss is somewhere between 50 to 150 milliliters. When you measure that out, that isn't much. But when you start thinking about it being absorbed by some kind of absorbent material, whether it's a tampon or a pad or whatever, or you're seeing it in the toilet, right? It's because it's being diluted in water,
Mm.
right? So we gotta think about the visuals here. What am I looking at? But really, the average amount is somewhere between 50 and 150 milliliters. Because you don't wanna lose a ton of blood, ladies, any more than we already have to, right? Okay. So then we've got to redevelop that uterine lining. And remember, the bleeding is because capillaries were ruptured. So proliferation is why we say the endometrium is repaired. Because if you have capillary structure breakdown, you've got to rebuild it. That make sense? Okay. Remember, anytime you bleed with what you should probably get bleeding to stop, and then we should repair the tissue. Right? Okay. So the endometrium at this point, or the lining, starts to get thicker and more velvety. And that is also going to be because of FSH and all that estrogen. Those estrogen levels start to rise because as we're repairing and getting ovaries ripened and that kind of stuff, estrogen levels go up. And then, once we had, do you remember LH?
Luteinizing.
Luteinizing hormone. Its primary exocrine thing is ovulation. So you can get all those follicles stimulated, but if you don't have progesterone, you will not have, if you don't have LH, you will not ovulate and you will not make the progesterone that you need. So we want to make sure that that uterus is ready for a baby, or an embryo at this point, right, that hasn't even implanted. So when we look at pregnancies, even before they've implanted, there is an attached yolk sac to help nourish this growing little blob of cells at this point. So if you think about the lining of your uterus, almost like the tips of your fingers, remember we've said the more you increase surface area, the better the functioning? Well, the impregnated egg also has a rapidly increased surface area, and it's like they dock into each other. And that connection of where that chorionic villi have connected with the uterine lining, that becomes the site of the placenta. And so until that blood flow is made available through the placenta, the nutrients for the baby has to come from the nutrients inside the uterus itself. So we talked about being a sugar solution for the male sperm in the uterus when you're pregnant until that implantation occurs and the placenta and the umbilical cord get going and feeding the baby. The nutrients are coming from the interior part of the uterus. that amniotic fluid that houses the baby is filtered every single hour. And it's completely replaced every 24. Because all metabolic functioning is happening in that fluid. Urination, etc. So not only are we filtering in 24 times a day, but we're also completely getting a new supply of amniotic fluid every 24 hours.
So when they say like the amniotic fluid level gets low, is that because it's not being replaced as fast?
It's either it's not being produced as fast,
Or
or
there's a
the
leak.
balance between production and loss is shifted.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll depend. Sometimes women can actually have partial placental detachment,
Mm.
and so that nourishment avenue for the little one really starts to struggle.
Mm.
And so, because think about everything that's coming in through the umbilical cord, never mind the fact that the body is producing all this amniotic fluid and making sure. That's why we are pushing pregnant women like crazy. Drink